Hello, and welcome to The Source Within, where I share the source within me with hopes it sparks the source within thee. And on today's episode, we are going to be talking about my trip now down to Sedona. So basically, last we left off, I was in Shasta, and there's a whole bunch of snow, several feet, well, maybe a foot and a half, no, probably 10 inches. Anyways, I was there for 7 days. It was cold. Time to go into the warmth, to migrate south like everybody does, whoever lives out of a van. And I went down Central California, went to see some family in Southern California, checked out Joshua Tree, which is awesome. Chef's kiss. Definitely encourage people to check it out, especially if you're into like kind of galactic, otherworld type energies. There's this quietude energy in Joshua Tree that's really profound and really cool. And then I made my way over to Arizona and headed towards Sedona. So, I went from Mount Shasta to Sedona. Folks that are in the spiritual world, you probably are picking up on those are two big hot spots. So clearly that's something I'm interested in, and that is where I was drawn, and I couldn't wait to go there next. I had been there before, but time was limited, so I was excited to go on my own volition, to be able to drive to Sedona and see where it is. So I got this. At this time of year, it's hard to find, this was around mid to late November, it's hard to find spots because, again, people migrate who are living out of vans or, RVs are migrating to the south in winter. So I was able to find a spot in a beautiful location, actually, looking at the red rocks, etc. But this is the first time I was parked around other people, and there was, one car backed by another car. It's kind of was like lined up. So you definitely are amongst other people. This was BLM camping there. So this was something very new to me, to be surrounded by other people in their vehicles. And that was an adjustment because I'm kind of a private person. And so when you're parked with and then there's somebody parked right next to you, you don't feel like you have a lot of privacy, especially when you're literally living out of your vehicle. So then if you're, I set up a chair and table outside, that's where I sit, there's people just right there. So it's an interesting, that is a big part of living on the road. A lot of people like that aspect of community, or they like connecting with other people. And there is, to some extent, there's something unique about traveling. I think I found this both when I was traveling internationally and when I was, living out of a van, that there's more of a push to interact with strangers. Like, I feel like in our day-to-day lives, if wherever, home base is, at least in my experience, you'll go out and you're amongst strangers all the time, but you never interact with them or, engage with them. But when you're traveling, it's like there's this different mindset where you're more curious to meet other people and say hi to them or what have you. And vice versa. I felt that as well from other people. So anyways, I ended up making friends with some guy. We went on like some treasure hunt. He said he found this like wooden box out in the Sedona desert that we like hiked to, and he wasn't sure what was in it, and he asked if we should open it or not. We decided not to because we didn't want to like open up any sort of like curse or anything, whatever. But that was fun, and it's a fun memory coming to mind now that it still sticks with me, this type of like adventure, again, being on the road, unexpected, what are you going to discover, and that sort of thing. But yeah, so the being around other people, there's pros and cons. It was nice to meet that person, but at the same time I wanted to kind of keep to myself, and especially as a woman traveling and being on the road, I personally just kind of held a little bit more of a boundary around myself, just in generally, to be like the don't mess with me kind of energy, because I'm a single woman on the road. And I didn't feel fearful, but also I wasn't holding energy that was super open and welcoming all the time. I was very discerning about my energy and how I was presenting in the world and to those around me. So again, I did mostly keep to myself, but at times there were times to interact and what have you. So Sedona was awesome. It was wonderful at that time of year. It was really an opportunity to be there. But I was really only there for like a day or two. And looking back on it, it's like, why, Chloe? Like, I had a great parking spot. I had a great views. The weather was nice. There was really no reason to move other than I kind of felt this internal pressure to go and meet with this friend at a certain time when I was going to stay with them for a little while. But there was no real need to leave, and I would have, in retrospect, liked to have been more in the moment of where I was at that time and capitalizing on spending time in that particular area. So that's something I would have done differently. You know, there are a lot of people around the road are retired, so they're probably in that tradition, their mindset of like, let's just be and hang and know where to be. But I still was caught up in this kind of a little bit of the grind, a little bit of like, gotta go, you know, there's time frames and there's limits and gotta be here and there, even though there wasn't, right? Like, but I was still kind of in that type of mindset to some degree. So if taking away any kind of wisdom for that, it's like, enjoy being where you are at whatever given time if you're on the road, and, you know, don't feel some sort of external pressure to get on with it if there isn't one. And that harkens back to kind of leaning in with going with the flow rather than trying to control in a lot of ways. Because there's a lot of decision making that needs to happen on the road, like where you're going to park, where you're going to stay, are you allowed to park there or not. And part of what the tiredness and the fatigue with being on the road came into play was the constant having to seek another place to stay. So had I stayed certain places longer, like on BLM land, you can stay for up to 2 weeks, there wouldn't have been quite as much of a pressure. But I created this discomfort inadvertently because I kept changing my locations in some way, you know? So those are some tips from this part of my journey that I could have done a little bit differently. It was slow down, stay where you are for a little bit, lean into it. Now, the other thing to keep in mind about a van versus other sort of off-roading vehicles or, you know, RV vehicles is that I couldn't drive, you know, if I leave, then I leave my parking spot, right? So there's hiking in Sedona, there's all this great stuff to do in Sedona, but because I live in my van, I would have had to lose or leave my parking spot in order to go do those hikes or what have you. So if you're thinking about potentially doing RV life or living on the road, keep that in mind. You know, what is most important to you? Do you want to be able to get up and go and leave some, you know, some sort of wherever you're sleeping, like, you know, those cab over trucks where you can park them and then pull your truck out so you can go places, or do you want a trailer, or, you know, there are other options. But do know that with a van that you're living out of, you have to move it, you can lose your parking spot. So, and then you have to set up and take down of your stuff every time you move. Now, most of my stuff was pretty secure. It's not like I had to do a lot of picking up and taking down. That was one of the beautiful things about in a van, because it's all within one container. It's not like I have to open things up and close them down or put them away or secure, you know, it's pretty all self-contained, which means I can get up and go quickly. But again, then you lose a parking spot potentially. So that's a pro and con to think about with choosing what vehicle you might be interested in. So it just depends on what you want to do. Now, there were other times where I connected with people and I went off with them because they had a vehicle I could go off with, you know, or in, what have you. But it just depends on what you're looking for and kind of what's most important to you in terms of your lifestyle on the road. So those were definitely some learning lessons from this trip to Sedona. But wow, was it magnificent to be there, and also so cool that I was able to be in like 2 big hot spots within, you know, just a few weeks of each other. And that's also the cool thing about being on the road, is like you can be in one place and then it'd be totally different climate, weather, you know, location, you know, within days. And so that's like the coolest. It's so cool in that way. That ability to, really just live life to the fullest in so many ways. So until next time's update, thanks so much for being here. And I share the source within me with hope that sparks the source within thee.